On today's show, the sweet sounds and smells of spring. People passionate and maybe a bit sappy make maple syrup.
2.7, 2.16 there.
The process start to finish as this sweet treat gets made for the outdoors.
But don't spoil your appetite because we have another treat for you. We head into the Walton's kitchen and whip up an outdoorsman's favorite snack.
People are passionate about outdoor equipment. Get this. Americans spend more than $20 billion a year on gear. But no one ever really sees how their stuff gets made.
Well, that's where we come in. Each week, we throw open the factory doors and give you a behind-the-scenes look at how your favorite gear is made.
Made for the Outdoors is brought to you by Board Review Lodge.
I love those photos. That is actually the Shirk Sugar Shack. And making maple syrup at Grandpa's house each spring was kind of a rite for me growing up. It is a passion for people. And I think you'll understand when you see how maple syrup gets made for the outdoors.
On a 17-acre hillside, sounds of spring echo through the Summer family forest. What's that noise? The pitch of the vacuum pumps during syrup season. The high-tech harvest of sap at Summerscogan Sugar Bush.
Now here's where the real work is done.
We're not really sucking the sap out of the tree. We're just tricking the tree to think that there's a low pressure system.
Don Summers' family collects each spring using some pretty fancy gear.
We have 1,000 taps in now. We have about 5 miles of tubing throughout the woods to collect it all.
A complex web of tubes connects every tap and every maple tree.
So we set this up on a vacuum system where we have main lines about every 150 feet, and they each service about 4 to 5 trees, and that then allows the sap to flow into a main line, which is sort of like a highway system, and it gets down to 900 feet deep in the woods to a 800-gallon tank, and that's where everything in the whole woods from 17 acres collects.
Now the sap leaves storage and enters the sugar shack. This is where the process really gets fun. Boiling sap takes both technique and a bit of skill.
There we are. That is all maple syrup. I would call it a modern high-tech system.
A system that pumps out sweet rewards.
Gold to a good maple syrup season.
It is liquid gold.
They all have their unique taste. It's just good.
Strange to think this gadgetry and this love of maple syrup started with a box. One old cardboard box.
When we first purchased the property in 1994, there was a little cabin on it. And my husband found a cardboard box that had 22 spiles or taps in it. And he thought, that's an interesting thing to do.
I didn't even know what a maple tree looked like without the leaves on it. The previous owners had some paint marks on about 20 trees. We just sort of thought, well, we have the trees, we had to tap them in our mind.
Priorities, yeah.
The business grew and their gear changed.
It's just been an incredible adventure.
That's evolved from a simple sugar shack to all of this.
it is not uncommon for us to collect over 20,000 gallons of sap from these taps. I think this is just about right. And others probably look at me and say, what is with this guy?
A great obsession. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. We are so blessed.
Up next, we step back a bit from a big operation to the simple drip, a sound that gets so many started making syrup.
Made for the Outdoors is brought to you by Borderview Lodge, Ice Castle Fish Houses, Aquarius Home Services, Car Arms, and by Keystone Light. Keystone Light, always smooth. Celebrate responsibly.
Today you get to see how one of my favorite products gets made for the outdoors, sort of by the outdoors. We're talking about maple syrup. Now those high-tech producers use all kinds of tubing and vacuums and fancy gadgets, but really for most producers it's that simple drip that is music to our ears.
Sugar time. It's sugar time. It sure feels fine.
Clark Moctimus celebrates two of the big M's in his life, music and maple syrup.
Yeah, this is good.
Clark teaches school. He also sings in a folk band, but none of his day jobs sweeter than 20 years tapping giant maple trees.
Basically, when we tap on a tree, you look at this is a fairly young one, so we go 15 inches diameter, you can tap one tap. 24 inches, we figure you can put two taps in. 36 inches, you put three. 48, 4.
This year, he teaches a newcomer, his son Mason, which makes 3 generations.
We used to do it this way when we started over 20 years ago by hand. Mason, you want to try it? You tap it, you drill it in 3 inches, 2-degree angle, it'll run by gravity, and then of course you put the tap in. See, this is the tail end of the run, but it's really, this one's really kicking in. And then we'd run it to a 5-gallon bucket.
Below freezing temps at night and above freezing during daylight hours means the sap runs.
It's bringing the sugar from the ground up to the leaves and to get nourishment.
Frost draws it back down and fills the buckets.
Oh yes, the mother lode. We color code these so we can see them in the winter.
Collect enough sap and it's time to fire up the boiler.
Okay, let's go to the next round.
That's where Clark's dad gets busy. Ron Moctimus stokes the fire.
We do it the old-fashioned way, and it's kind of a family thing that we do. It has to be good and hot.
Same for the sap, the magic number 219.
219, it is still maple syrup, it doesn't become crystallized sugar.
On average, 40 gallons of sap boils down to 1 gallon of syrup.
Ooh, it's taking the moisture out of the syrup. It's taking the sugar, separating the sugar from the water. It's just a pure maple syrup. We don't add anything to it, it's just natural.
The annual harvest dependent on both weather and the trees.
We boil it right down to what you see is what you get.
That success not exactly about dollar bills.
We're gonna have I think if it keeps going the way it is, we'll have a record year.
Just dip your finger in there. Okay. How is it?
Yeah, good.
So they continue to collect until warmer weather ends the season. Then it's on to dreaming of next year.
Okay.
Music to the ears of those who make maple syrup.
Will recipes from old, no, they won't be sold.
Made for the Outdoors is brought to you by All Seasons Garage Door, Polaris Industries, Driven Coffee, L&M Fleet Supply, and by Warner's Dog.
After a long day in the woods, nothing is more satisfying than enjoying the fruits of your labor. And what better way to celebrate than having the outdoorsman's favorite snack, the meat stick. Making your own could seem daunting, but luckily Walton's has everything you need to turn your prize into a mouth-watering snack.
Their slogan says it all: everything but the meat. Since 1986, Walton's has provided grinders, mixers, seasonings, casings, everything you could possibly need to process your latest hunting score. The family-owned company continues to offer top-of-the-line supplies, plus videos, tutorials, and other resources to support your kitchen conquests. Rest assured, their recipes are tested in-house to perfection. Their 50,000 square foot facility in Wichita, Kansas has plenty of room to experiment and dial in each and every recipe. But enough talk already. Let's get into the kitchen and get cooking. Show us how it's done, John.
This is wild game venison snack sticks.
Here's what you're going to need: venison, pork fat, seasoning, meat binder, frozen cheese, Weston 44-pound meat mixer, a Weston meat grinder, 19mm smoked collagen, and a Weston stuffer. It might sound like a lot, but Walton's makes it easy. They have it all. Except for the meat, of course. All right, first things first.
So the first thing that's important with venison is you want to make sure everything is ultra clean. That's why we recommend you either spray things down with a Maxim, let it sit there for 60 seconds and then rub it off, or just use these food contact sanitizing wipes. Makes everything nice and simple. Just want to make sure all of your equipment, all of your storage bins, everything is as clean as you can get them. With venison, the easiest way that we find to deal with it is to freeze it while it's in the vacuum bags. Then take it out, let it sit in the fridge overnight. You're gonna wanna get some sort of serrated knife and cut it up into chunks that are small enough to fit down your grinder's head.
Before you get grinding, here's a little secret.
These are zip ties I have that keeps one plate with one knife. That way, these are able to wear at the same rate and it extends the life of my plates and knives. So we're gonna grind all the venison first through this 3/8 or a breaker plate basically. Just everything's frozen, so it should grind really nice and quickly.
Grind and grind some more.
Now that everything's been ground through once, we're gonna go ahead and grind everything through the 1/16 plate, and this is where we're gonna add our pork fat. Now, if you can't get straight pork fat, you can use untrimmed pork butts and go at a 50-50 ratio. Now, as I'm grinding my pork fat, I like to mix it in with the venison. That way you don't have a big clump of ground pork fat and a big clump of ground venison. It's mixed throughout. It makes mixing a lot easier. So we're gonna put all of our meat in first. Then we're gonna mix in our seasoning. Then we're gonna add our binder. I'm also gonna be adding the water, which I've already mixed the cure in. Since I'm making venison with a taco snack stick seasoning, I didn't want the tang that encapsulated citric acid gives. So I have measured out an incredibly small amount of sodium erythorbate. If you want to do something like this at home, I would suggest that you go with a smoked meat stabilizer instead, as it's easier to measure out that amount. Keep mixing. We want to make sure that everything's nice and sticky, that we've got good protein extraction.
Now for some optional add-ins, if you're feeling up to it.
And then during the last 60 seconds or so, we're going to add our cheese.
Pro tip, use frozen cheese. This will help maintain the form. Again, Walton's is all about making your life easier.
All right, so now we're on to stuffing. We're gonna choose the largest stuffing tube that our casing will go over. I'm using 19mm smoked collagen here. You can use 19 or 21. I really don't like going much smaller than 19. It puts a lot of pressure on the stuffer and it's really just not necessary. As we're stuffing this, we wanna make sure that we're not over or under stuffing our casing. What we're looking for here is there is a line that swirls down the entire casing. We wanna stuff to the point where you can just barely see that line. If you can see that line easily, you're understuffing. If there's no line at all, you're overstuffing.
Hungry yet? Time to test your patience.
We went ahead and started with a 10-minute drying phase. So we had 120 degrees, 10 minutes, all vents open and fans on. Don't add smoke or humidity during this phase or the next phase, which is going to be 30 minutes at 130 degrees, again, with everything wide open, no smoke, no humidity. After that, we closed the dampers down 2/3 of the way. We added smoke and humidity, and we went ahead and cooked it for an hour. After that, we bumped it up to 150 degrees for another hour. Then we put it up to 160 degrees for 30 minutes, and finally we put it up to 180 degrees until the internal temperature reached 160 degrees.
After all that drying, it's time to cool down in a 20-minute ice bath.
So we're done. These came out excellent.
The final step is undoubtedly the best. Enjoy your hard-earned, self-prepared venison snack stick. Still hungry? We have more deliciousness when we return on Made for the Outdoors.
Made for the Outdoors is brought to you by Polaris Industries, Otter Tail County, Minnesota, and by Pearson's Salted Nut Roll.
We came, we saw, we conquered, and ate the venison snack stick. But there's another of Walton's famous recipes we're ready to try.
This is Jerky 203 using glycerin instead of sugar. Now, we've already done a few videos here about using sugar to help make homemade jerky that's nice and tender. If you add 18% sugar and 20% water to your jerky during the marinating process, it's gonna help you keep your jerky nice and tender while still keeping the water activity low, which is what allows jerky to be more shelf stable. So let's face it, I mean, 18% added sugar takes a relatively healthy snack like jerky and turns it into what's basically junk food. Now, glycerin is a sweetener that doesn't interact with your body in the same way that sugar does. It doesn't seem to spike your blood sugar as much, which would indicate that it's a better choice for everyone, but especially maybe for diabetics. Now, if you're looking for some glycerin, it's relatively inexpensive to purchase large bottles like this one on Amazon. So first you have to slice your meat into slightly thicker than 1/4-inch pieces, and you're gonna cut across the grain just like always. Then you're gonna mix all of your ingredients, including the extra sugar and water and the cure and seasoning, until it's fully suspended. You don't want a bunch of sugar sitting at the bottom of your mixture, so this might take you some more time than normal. We then ran both of these through a vacuum tumbler to pick up as much of the solution as possible. Now, you can use a home-style tumbler like the Express Tumbler Marinade, or if you don't have that, you can also just vacuum pack it, let it sit for about 24 hours, and massage the meat occasionally. That's gonna help loosen up the fibers of the meat, and it's gonna pick up more of the solution that way. Next, you're gonna lay everything out on a rack in your smoker. Now, if you have the ability to control the humidity in your smoker, then I'll list the relative humidity levels in the post on Meatgistics, and we'll link that down below in the description. If you don't have a way to control the humidity, then I suggest you go get yourself a larger than normal water pan and a few automotive sponges. And no, I'm not gonna make you clean my truck before I tell you what to do next. What you're gonna do is get those sponges nice and wet and then sit them in the water pan with half of it sticking out in the air. This is gonna increase the surface area for evaporation and allow for greatly increased relative humidity in your smoker. Now, you won't be adding that until after the first 20 minutes. So that's your drying phase. You don't wanna add humidity during that. So your first stage is gonna be 20 minutes at 110 degrees with your dampers wide open and no water pan in there. Then at 30 minutes, you're gonna add that water pan, up it to 135 degrees, add smoke, and close your dampers. Stage 3 is gonna be just 10 minutes at 140 degrees, again, with dampers wide open. Stage 4 is gonna be 30 minutes at 150 degrees, and then stage 5, which is the last one, is 175 degrees until the internal temperature of your jerky is 160 degrees. So obviously both of these batches are done, and you can clearly see a few differences in the batches. The one that we did with the sugar has a glistening to it. It's slightly tacky and sticky to touch. The one that we used the vegetable glycerin on, we don't have that appearance. It's mostly dry and appears to be normal. As you can see, I mean, it's tender. The bite on it's really nice. It's about the same as this. For the taste, there is a slight aftertaste that I noticed when I used the glycerin that just isn't present when I use the sugar. Both of these we used the pepper and garlic seasoning on. Now that's not something, that little aftertaste is not something that would prevent me from using glycerin again in the future if I was looking to make a healthier product but still wanted it to be nice and tender.
For more mouth-watering recipes, tips, and to get all of your meat processing essentials, head to waltonsinc.com. Until next time, happy snacking.